RJ Manuelian is a criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. He's been following this case. RJ, a lot of people are shocked at what they see as a slap on the wrist sentence, but you say it's an appropriate sentence. Why?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm torn. I have a daughter, and as a father, I understand what the victim's father and parents are going through. As a lawyer, I've seen this type of deal before. If you could recall, there was a case in Los Angeles, the UCLA water polo sport champion, Jack Kaplanian. The same situation, he got 6 months. I actually represented somebody in a USC rape case, same situation, rape by intoxication, or having sex with somebody that's intoxicated, 6 months. I think the reason why there's an outrage in the case is based on the callousness of the father's letter. I know for a fact the lawyer didn't look at this letter, because if I did, there's no way I would have the father read off to the court that my son's going to miss his big ribeye steak. It's just callous. What he should have done is he should have looked that victim in the eye and said, what my son did to you was wrong. What he did to you was awful, and I'm sorry. And then perhaps segued into his fatherly role. But the way he went about doing it, as you said, he added fuel to the fire, and he shouldn't have done it that way. And that's the fault of the lawyer, in my opinion.
I want to talk more about the father in a moment. But first, RJ, I want to go back to something you just said a moment ago. So essentially what you're saying is you think this is an appropriate sentence for this young man in this case because others who found themselves in the same situations and faced the same charges have also received the same sentence. Is that, but what is, I guess the question is, what about the merits of the case that the prosecutor put on? Were there deficiencies? From that perspective, I think that's what some people are looking at. The experience of the victim in that powerful, testimony is what has a lot of people shaking their heads at this verdict.
And I can understand that, but remember, during sentencing, there are two things that the judge is going to consider. Number one, mitigating factors. What factors is useful towards Mr. Turner? He has no prior criminal history. He was a swim star at Stanford, never in trouble, a pillar of his community, no criminal record. That's all something that the judge considers. Now, the aggravating is obviously the case, the conviction itself. But remember, the judge has discretion in this case, Elaine. If people aren't happy with what the judge did, they should go to their lawmakers, their legislature, and tell them to change the law so they have mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines. This is what the judge's power and authority is all about. The legislature gave him the authority to weigh the pros and the cons about what to do with this person. And remember, Elaine, this guy has the scarlet letter for the rest of his life. He's a convicted sexual molester, rapist. If you go online, you'll see his face, you'll see what he's charged with. He's got to live with that scarlet letter for the rest of his life. That's a severe punishment.
As is the punishment that the victim herself pointed out, the damage that's been done to her that she'll carry around for the rest of her life. In her testimony, the victim said this verdict is an extreme example of the privilege that young white males or wealthier people are afforded within the justice system. What do you think about that?
You know, that's something very interesting to me. I think there's a little bit of truth to that. I represent indigent African Americans and minorities, and I do believe that there's a disparage in sentencing when it comes to how certain demographics are sentenced. I agree with that, and I think we should address that as a culture and as a people. I think everybody should be sentenced equally, not just based on who's your lawyer and what the odds are based on who your lawyer is. So I agree with you on that point.
What about going back to the father, the phrase 20 minutes of action? What is your sense of the use of that language in this kind of letter where he's speaking in this case where, his son's fate rests in this judge's hands, and he's using this phrase 20 minutes of action?
It's wrong for him to use it on every level. It's not ethical. It's in my opinion, it's cruel. It's callous. His lawyer should have read that letter, as I would have, and told him, take that part out, Mr. Turner. Be more empathetic. Talk about the victim. Because look what's happening. We're talking about this all over TV right now because of the fire that he spilled out based on the sentence. If somebody is raped, you don't talk to somebody like that. You don't talk to a judge and say, well, my son needs a steak, and it's only 20 minutes of action that caused this incident. No, that's not what he should have said. He should have told the judge that he knows his son is wrong. His son is a good guy, but it was an aberration of character, and explain it that way. The way he did it was so callous that the victim and the judge in this case are now being, well, not the victim, but the judge is being scrutinized, and there's a recall right now going on because of that. Had this lawyer reviewed that letter and taken out those parts, we wouldn't be here talking about this right now.
Yeah, and on that point, I mean, there are petitions that have surfaced online to recall this judge, Judge Aaron Persky. One of them, we're told, has over 100,000 signatures. Is it possible for a judge to be recalled? And do you see that going forward?
I think it's all political at this point. I think his opponents are trying to raise enough money through their PACs and super PACs to oust the judge. I don't think that's right. It's sending a wrong message. That means every time a judge makes a mistake, you're going to recall them. Is that the message we want to send to all the judges? We want to put the fear in all the judges to put people in prison for a long time. And by the way, if Mr. Turner went to prison for 5-6 years, would that make him a better person? Would that satisfy everybody? Would that make him into this person that we all want him to be? Nothing was going to change in prison. The only thing that prison is going to do is make things worse. I know that doing 15 years of this. What he needs is rehabilitation, not prison.
Okay. All right. Obviously, the victim and the victim's family would feel very differently. RJ Manuelian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elaine.